Hey there, everybody. This is Beyond the Beach, Career Conversations with graduates of Cal State Long Beach. I'm your host, Kenji Klein, Associate Professor of Management at the College of Business at California State University, Long Beach, where I teach business strategy, general management, and organization theory. For those of you joining us for the first time, in this show, I interview former students and recent graduates about life after Long Beach. Our conversations cover topics like how my guests chose a career path, how they landed their first job, and what it's been like to navigate the chaos, challenges, and opportunities of their early careers. My hope in doing this podcast is that instead of presenting you with abstract theories or generic advice about managing those critical first few years of your post-school life, I can provide a platform for real people who were in your exact shoes just a few years ago to share their stories so you can get an honest and realistic picture of what it might be like out there. I hope you find their stories and experiences useful and inspiring in helping you chart your path beyond the beach. My guest today is Allison Quintanilla. Allison was a student in my business strategy class back in 2015, and now she works as the accounting integration lead at a software company called ServiceTitan. Hey, Allison, it's really great to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let me dive right in with some questions I have for you. I'm wondering if you could just briefly introduce yourself to the audience. Let them know who you are, when you graduated, and what you studied, and a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, so my name's Allison Quintanilla. I graduated back in 2016 from CSULB. Undergrad major was in accounting. And it's kind of funny how I fell into that because, you know, like when you're in high school, you're near graduation, you take those aptitude tests before enrolling in college, and it tells you, hey, this is what you should major in.
Right.
So I've always been really good in math.
Okay.
And these aptitude tests, I swear, 3 times in a row, it always said, hey, you should major in accounting or finance.
Oh, interesting.
And in high school, I didn't really even know what accounting was per se. I just thought it was like a number thing, didn't really understand it. So when I was submitted into college or whatnot, and you had to pick a major. Right. It was required.
Right.
So, of course, I just said accounting for now because that's what the test always said.
Right. Okay.
I'll change it later. And then, sure enough, when I took my first accounting course, it was like common sense to me. It was so easy. And, of course, if something comes easy to you, then you tend to enjoy it a bit more. Yep. So I actually ended up sticking with it, and I did enjoy it very much.
Yeah, that's funny because when I was thinking about this question for you, right, because I knew you were an accounting major, I was thinking, was this like ever since I was in kindergarten, I knew I wanted to be an accountant kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely not. If anything, when I was younger, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. I wanted to be in some type of power position. Right. But then again, I didn't really know, how those roles came to be. And of course, like I mentioned before, I was always good with numbers, always good in math. And I didn't know when I was younger what I could do with that. Yeah. My perspective has changed immensely since that. But yeah, I ended up majoring in accounting. And what I do today now, like you mentioned, I work in tech for a company called ServiceTitan. Okay. I lead an accounting integrations team.
Right. So what exactly does that mean? Because you said that in the email, and I saw that, and I'm like, okay, I think I know what that means, but I want to ask you directly. And then I think listeners might be like, what in the world does that mean?
Totally. Okay. So ServiceTitan is a operational software for home service businesses. So it's like a CRM.
Home service business means?
Home service businesses like your HVAC, electrical, plumbing, heating and air, those type of businesses. Even though they seem so small, they can actually be like huge enterprise companies.
Right.
So, regardless of size, these companies, they purchase our software.
Right.
They run all of their dispatching jobs, invoices through our software, but our software doesn't offer accounting in it.
Okay.
So when they come on board with us, oftentimes they want to get onto a new accounting platform. Okay. Insert my team, and we help migrate their financial data into a new accounting platform and make sure that that platform integrates with ServiceTitan.
Okay. So your ServiceTitan itself does not have an accounting component itself, but there are accounting systems that work better or worse with your system?
Right. So, for example, QuickBooks Desktop.
Yep.
That's probably the most popular one.
Using,
we will migrate financial data into QuickBooks Desktop for our clients, and then we will integrate that platform with ServiceTitan.
Okay, that's cool. And that's your job?
I don't do...
You lead now.
Yeah, I lead now.
Okay. Right.
But yeah, and then we also work with bigger platforms such as Sage Intacct for our bigger clients.
Right.
our more mega enterprise private equity clients. So yeah, I've worked with a lot of different platforms.
Right.
And
so your work now is mostly you're managing the people who are doing the integration?
Correct.
And you used to actually be one of the people doing the integration, and you moved up into that position of managing people? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
and even our software itself has transformed over the years because I've been with ServiceTitan for quite a few years now. So now we've had new features. I work a lot with our product team and developers on new releases, new beta features, trying to test them out before we release them to our clients.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a question I have immediately pops into mind is like, what percentage of your work is now number crunching and working with numbers, and what percentage of it is dealing with people, working with people, and people issues?
That's a good question. I would say probably 10% of it is numbers, and a lot of it is dealing with people.
Right.
And when I say dealing with people, I don't mean like managing people per se.
Right.
It's more about managing certain scenarios.
Yeah.
If there's certain escalations, if there's new features, giving the accounting perspective on it.
Right.
And not only accounting perspective, but the managerial perspective of how to deal with certain situations and what are the right steps to take for a certain escalation or a certain scenario.
The reason I'm asking that question is there may be the podcast is mostly aimed at people that are, probably later years in college. So they probably have already chosen a major. But I think, for people who haven't, I think it's useful to remember that, because a lot of people, when they think accounting, they think, I don't want to do accounting because I'm just going to be doing numbers for the rest of my life. But the reality is it's not always like that, right? So in your situation, numbers is a small percentage of your actual workday.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that either, by the way. When I was younger in school, I thought, okay, I'm going to do numbers for the rest of my life.
Right.
I guess that's okay since I'm good at it. But realistically, it does turn into a different position. And there's so many different routes that you could take with accounting. Yep. And I used to think you would always just be stuck in a corporate job or doing public accounting, working for a firm and doing, either audit or tax, right? Definitely not the deal. There's so many routes that you could take with accounting. And it's probably one of, now in retrospect, right, and where I am today, it's probably now one of the stronger majors, I would say, just because it is a strong skill to carry. Yep. Even if you don't have an accounting related role, if you're, I don't know, an account executive or you're in support even, no matter what your role, if you have some kind of accounting knowledge, it can go a very long way. Right. And I've seen it with certain colleagues of mine that are not necessarily in my team, but they have that knowledge. Yeah. It definitely goes a long way for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing, right, if you're an executive or you're a manager and you're dealing with people and people are coming at it from a different perspective, and you've got someone who's in engineering or you've got someone who's in sales or marketing, right, and you're trying to explain to them why you have certain priorities because it's grounded in like the financials, right, which matter to you, and they don't get it because they don't have that accounting perspective, it's probably a little frustrating. But if the person understands it because they're familiar with it, you're just like, yes, you're someone I really like working with because you get it when I tell you these things.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And it's not, because a lot of people view these standards as more of a want than a need, right? Like, oh, you just prefer to have this reflected in your financials, or you prefer to have it this way. But it's like, no, it's not a preference. It's actually GAAP. And if we want to create new product items, come out with new features, it needs to be by GAAP standards in order to give us more rec.
I want to interrupt on GAAP. Yeah. Not everyone knows, right?
Oh, sorry. So GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles.
Right? So that basically means that you guys are required to do things a certain way.
Right.
Legally.
Correct.
Right. And GAAP is what those protocols are.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so if you don't know that, you're just like, these people, they just want the numbers because they're crazy about numbers. And you're like, no, we got to do this because we're going to get busted if we don't do it.
Exactly.
We have to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. So let me go back. Sorry, we got off a little bit from what I wanted to go. But let's talk about your, so you didn't originally start at ServiceTitan, right? So I want you to tell me a little bit about like the first job after graduating, how you found it, and what that transition was like from being a student who had taken the accounting class but hadn't been in the workplace, or maybe you did, to being like an employee. Like, what was that like? What did you learn? What was hard? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
To start with how you found it.
So I guess while I was in college first, I found a small internship, and then I was working for my brother.
Okay.
He owns his own insurance company.
Okay.
And that was in itself was a little bit daunting for me, just because I felt like I was faking it in a way. Like I told my brother, hey, yeah, I can do this for you. I can help you with your books, because he did need a lot of help. He wasn't keeping track of his revenue. He wasn't keeping track of his liabilities. And so I told him I'd help him. But I feel like that went a long way for me, because people don't like the fake it till you make it, you know, theory. But I'm a big... I really believe in that.
Yeah.
But really, I ended up building a QuickBooks file for him. And then anytime I doubted myself, I just ended up hiring a consultant, paid them $100 just to tell me if I was on the right track or not.
Right.
And surprisingly, I was. And they made little adjustments here and there.
Yeah.
And that got me through my last year of college.
Okay.
And after college, a few months after that, I was looking for, more full-time job.
Right.
And so I was literally applying everywhere. I was, you become a little desperate at that point. It's like, I'll take whoever will take me, because when you graduate, all of these companies, they want you to be a new graduate for an entry-level position with 2 years experience and all of these crazy requirements, right? So it was a little difficult for me. And at that point in time, I wasn't really interested in working for a big four. One of the big firms. I didn't want to be... I wasn't interested in that at the time. So that was not
your aspiration? You weren't like...
It wasn't my aspiration. Do I regret that now? That's a different conversation. Okay. But I ended up finding this company, my first company that I worked for through LinkedIn. It was so important, and still is, to keep your LinkedIn profile and your connections up to date. But I found the posting through there. They interviewed me, and this company, it's... in the steel industry. So it was a huge manufacturer in North America, Zekelman Industries, if we want to get specific. So I ended up working in the steel industry, and my role at first was, junior accountant. So I was just doing a lot of really simple entry-level accounting items. And I was quickly promoted after 6 months to staff accountant and doing, I had more responsibilities. So not only doing your basic general accounting, but I was also leading inventory. And when I say leading inventory, I meant, we had to do twice a year, we had to take inventory counts. So our inventory, we probably, I'm trying to think back now, there was probably $20 million worth in inventory. So I had to lead our entire team in making sure counts were accurate, look at the cost.
So you basically want to make sure that you know what all the inventory is and what it's worth.
And look at any variances. Right. Making sure we're not losing inventory. So
anything that you think you have, but you don't have, it's like, what happened to it? Right. Or we have this, but it's not on the book, so how come?
Exactly. And so that was a huge responsibility in itself, but as I took that on, they gave me more to do. I started doing more FP&A, which was not really accounting related. FP&A, for those that don't know, is financial planning and analysis. So looking at budget versus actuals, explaining variances in that. And I honestly did so much at that in that position.
So let me ask you a question. So you said you started there, you were a junior accountant, and then after 6 months they moved you up to staff accountant, right? So was it typical, do you think, for someone to go and 6 months in they get promoted to that position, or if it wasn't typical, then what was it that got you to that next step?
I don't want to say it was typical. I feel like I was a bit fortunate because I got along very well with both my manager and the controller, which were the two that I reported to directly. And the senior accountant had left the company, and so there was room for growth there. And I had asked for it. I was going beyond scope of what what my position entailed.
So going beyond scope, I just want to stop you there. Going beyond scope means you had a job definition. There's a job description. And you're getting that work done, and then you're saying, what else can I do?
Exactly.
And you're doing more than, quote, unquote, you were hired for, right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important thing for people to understand. Sometimes that's what it takes, right? To get promoted, to move on. It's just like, don't just say, well, this is my description, so this is the only thing that I have to do.
Exactly. And I've seen people do that where, they're given opportunities where, well, maybe not so much the opportunity yet, but they're handed a responsibility. Like, hey, if you can show me that you can do this, then promotion is an option.
Right.
And people don't want to do that.
Yeah.
They say, no, I'll do this when you promote me.
Right.
But people need to know that you're capable first.
Right. They don't want to give you the position and be like, oh, I thought they could handle it, but I didn't have any evidence that they could handle it, and guess what? They can't.
Right.
Right. Whereas when you do something that's outside your scope, suddenly you're saying, the person's looking and going, oh, okay, well, if we move them in a position where they're doing that, we know they'll get it done because they did it here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I feel like that won't always be okay.
Sure.
Because in this, at that first company where I was at, eventually after a year and a half or 2 years, I was doing so much work.
Right.
And we had sister companies across the nation.
Right.
So I would, go visit the other plants, the other manufacturing facilities. And I had realized during those visits that my counterparts, basically, at those sites, they all had a higher title than mine.
Right, okay.
Okay, so they were, finance manager, senior accounting manager, and we had the same exact tasks.
Right.
Same exact responsibilities. Right. So, I had a discussion with my manager about it, and she said, well, you're learning these things. Right. We're showing you how to do it. So I said, okay, that makes sense.
Right.
But sure enough, 6 months later, this was at the 2-year mark, I was a bit frustrated, and, I don't know why I was so scared. I was so scared to confront my director and tell her, hey, I want a promotion. Right. Because I'm doing all this. Yep. But I don't know why. I was so intimidated. I was so young and I was so scared.
You were 2 years out. And
but eventually...
Also, I will say, there's a lot of data that says that women are more hesitant to ask for promotions that they deserve than guys are.
And I have seen that firsthand. So I did end up going to my director. I said, hey, I am doing X, Y, and Z. I understand before I was learning it, but this is what I'm producing today. Is there something that I can improve on, because this is what I want? Yep. Right. And that was the hardest conversation for me. I don't know why, but I've learned from that. And she heard me out, but she wanted to see more from me. Right. Basically more than what anybody else was doing. Right. Which I didn't think was cool. And
for sure.
Now in hindsight, I think that was more of an excuse not to give me a promotion. Right. Because honestly, there's so many companies out there that will work you to the bone as long as you let them.
Exactly true. Yeah. So I think So like I had started saying specifically, like, hey, you want to get ahead, sometimes you got to do more than is in your job description. Mm-hmm. And you had said, yeah, but, right? And I think that's an important thing, that's that balance.
Yes,
right?
set expectations.
You have to think this through, right? It's like you probably need to do more than the minimum to get, for a lot of things, to get opportunities and to learn, like they said. But you definitely also be aware that you don't want to get exploited by doing that.
Exactly.
Because people will. They're just like, oh, I pile more work on that person because they're doing it and they're not asking for anything in return. Yep. And maybe we're not willing to give them anything in return, so we'll do it as long as they can. Yeah. But in the end, they weren't willing to give you the promotion.
They weren't.
So
I started looking for other opportunities. And I was so down in the dumps. I just felt so defeated. Right. Because I got out of my comfort zone. I asked for what I had wanted. Right. Not that I was entitled to it per se, but now I'm stuck with all of these extra responsibilities. Yep. No promotion. Yeah. I gave them an extra few months, but I stayed there until my current company had reached out to me. Okay. And
so they reached out to you. So you didn't suddenly be. This is interesting because I had another conversation with someone else, right, who was just like, I didn't get what I wanted, and that's when I knew I gotta find an exit strategy, and immediately got really aggressive about looking for something else.
Yeah, well, I was somewhat aggressive. I did have a few interviews. Mm-hmm. I wasn't getting the ones that I had wanted, which is discouraging, right? Yeah. But I did have recruiters reaching out to me because, recruiters find you through LinkedIn. Right. They would even call my office line. Oh, wow. And, ask me if I was interested in another job, which I thought was so unprofessional.
Yeah, that seems really tacky.
Yeah, so tacky. But, I wasn't getting the jobs that I had wanted, that I was interviewing for. And sure enough, I get a call from this internal recruiter one day, and they're trying to recruit me. They're asking if I'm interested. And I had never heard of the company before. They're like, just come to the office.
Right.
You know, we'd like to meet you.
Okay.
And sure enough, I went, and it was like love at first sight.
Okay.
I was so impressed with them. They
cool.
were considered a startup at the time because, I think I ended up being employee number 500.
Okay.
And now we're at well over 2,000.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's
that's grown a lot in those 5 years,
it's grown a
right?
lot, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, that's how I got to where I am today.
Okay.
But I feel like if my LinkedIn, if I wasn't so active on there, they probably wouldn't have reached out to me.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I want to draw us back just a little bit because you had talked about how having that first conversation was hard for you.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. So what did you do to push yourself to have that conversation? Like, what was it? What was the point at which you said, I'm going in and I'm doing this? Like, what was that process like? Do you remember that at all? It was a while ago, but.
Yeah. Honestly, I think I was just driven by, let me think. I wanted to be incentivized. Mm-hmm. I felt like my work-life balance wasn't balancing, right? I was working a lot more than I had signed up for. So I thought to myself, okay, like they need to incentivize me for this. Yeah. But how do I ask for that?
Right.
And I feel like I didn't really have anyone to ask around me.
Right.
Like, hey, how do you think I should address this situation? How do you think I should ask? I mean, my manager, she reported to the same director as I did.
Okay.
And if anything, I spoke to her as well. She was really nice about it. And she didn't really help. She was just like, just go do it.
Right. Okay.
But I'm like, what does that mean? How do I just go do it? And I think I just kind of just stopped thinking. I was overanalyzing it. And I just woke up one day. I'm like, why am I overanalyzing it? I should just go in and ask. And if she says no, then that's okay. Right. I will know and go to sleep at the end of the day knowing that I at least tried and I had at least asked.
Okay.
It wasn't going to hurt me at the end of the day. And so I had to come to that realization and just grow up.
And was that the day you asked?
It was... No, not the exact, because my director, she had traveled a lot, so she wasn't in the office every day. So I knew, next time she's in, which was the following week, I'm going to ask her.
And you did. You executed.
And I did, yes.
The reason I ask is I can see myself in that situation. I'm like, all right, wait a minute, I got to do it. Okay, today's the day. And then I go through the day, and then for whatever reason, I don't do it. I put it off and put it off and put it off. But sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and go in.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Cool. So, I mean, the next question I wanted to ask you, but I guess it might be this. It was about a memorable challenge you faced early in your career and how you overcame it. So I don't know if this was it, or was there something else that you can think of?
Yeah, I would say that was a pretty memorable challenge just because I do think about it often, even though it seems so minuscule. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't have any problems today communicating my expectations and what I want.
Right.
I'm not scared of confrontation at all. If anything, I ask for constructive feedback.
Right.
And those are the type of things that I feel like lead to growth at the end of the day. Yeah. Even if it doesn't mean, a new position or a new title, you're growing yourself as a person.
So that's interesting. So I'm thinking about that in the sense that that's kind of you had a change of the way that you behave, or the way you're acting in the workplace, in the sense that now you're not, like, then you were scared, but having gone through that experience, maybe you realize it's not that big a deal, and so from then on you're like, no, this is what I think I'm worth and I'm willing to ask for it.
Right.
That's the change that happened, or?
Yeah, I think so. And I was less scared of confrontation and asking for the things that I wanted, and knowing, I feel like it was more about knowing my value.
Right.
And what I was worth. In comparison to the job and the work that I was doing. Yeah. So, that was a pretty memorable challenge. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I can, if you want, I can give you another example. There's so many challenges that I've...
Give me another one.
Okay.
Because the thing is everybody runs into challenges.
Right.
We're all running into them. And I think it's like to hear about what these things are and maybe how people navigated them or dealt with them, I think is just instructive.
Yeah. I can think of one right now. At a prior company that I worked for, that first one that I worked for, I was so young, right? I was fresh out of college. I had all of this fresh new knowledge in my brain that I was ready to apply.
Right.
And so there were certain individuals that felt, I don't know, they were kind of aggressive towards me.
Okay.
They didn't like to work with me.
Okay.
They would give me, strong attitude.
Okay.
And it made me feel scared.
Right.
I was confused. I didn't want to, go to their office and ask them because I knew that they would shut me down or not work with me. And so there was one gal in particular. She had been with the company for like over 40 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she pretty much would like walk away from me almost every time I would work with her or try and ask her things. So it got so bad one day that I just decided, you know what? This is like ridiculous. And HR wasn't doing anything.
Right.
And so I figured, you know what? I should just go talk to her.
Okay.
And I'm like, maybe there's something I'm doing that I don't know. Maybe she's going through something.
Right.
But I need to work with her because, I was in accounting. She worked in the receiving area.
Okay.
So at the end of the month, if there's items that we've received that we haven't accounted for, we have to account for that in our liabilities.
Right.
Received but not invoiced type of thing. And so I went to her office one day and I said, hey, do you have a minute? And she puts her pencil down. She's like, yeah, what do you want?
Okay.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go.
Yeah.
And I was kind of scared to confront her, right? Because I felt like, this woman, she's been at the company for so long. She has a strong voice in the company.
Right.
She can easily just kick me out of the office if she wants to. But I ended up just closing the door. Mm-hmm. And I looked at her and I'm like, hey, I really want to ask you if there's something that I've done to you.
Right.
Is there something that I've done that makes you not want to work with me? I feel like you have this strong attitude towards me, and I really just want to talk to you about it because I would really like us to work together and not have this weird, unknown animosity between us.
Right.
And she looks at me and she takes this deep breath. She's like, oh, Allison, she just felt like sudden, I don't know, remorse. And I can't really explain it. But she was just like, it's not you. I just feel like sometimes when you're asking me these questions, it's like you're, putting my job in jeopardy. She thought I was second guessing her work and trying to get her in trouble.
Right.
And it's more about she just didn't understand why I had to ask her certain questions.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, okay, so it's just a miscommunication. She didn't understand. Right. It's like, you're doing your job completely right.
Right.
I just need to know these things so we can get this reflected on our balance sheet. That's it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, right? So it's really easy to see somebody's actions and then kind of like assume that you understand what the intent is behind it.
Right.
And make a misjudgment. Right?
Exactly.
So she was assuming that your intent was actually trying to cause trouble. And you're just like, this is what my job requires me to do. Or I need to understand this so I can, for whatever reason, I need to understand it this way in order to be able to do my job the way that I feel is the right way to do it.
Yes.
So that took courage to go in and talk to her, though.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it did take some courage. But, after that, we got along just fine, and it wasn't nothing was an issue. So I felt like if I didn't do that, that animosity would have just built up into who knows what.
Yeah.
But
that's great. That's great that you did that. And again, I mean, I don't say the word courage lightly, because that's one of the things that I see it over and over again in like management situations. It's just like sometimes you have to kind of, there's some fear involved in any kind of a conflict situation, and sometimes you just have to go, look, the outcome is more important than me worrying about the fear.
Yeah, exactly. And, especially, I don't know, when accounting people, math people, we're not the most social people, usually, sometimes from what I've seen. So sometimes it's, at least when you're younger, right, you don't understand people very well. Right. So if someone's acting a certain way, most of the time, 90% of the time, it probably has nothing to do with you.
Right.
It's, you never understand what someone's going through. And so it's really just about understanding people and just having open communication. Yeah. That's all.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really good. So let me move to a sort of a different question. I want to, I'm curious about college education, right? Was there anything aside from maybe like the straight, well, even including that stuff, stuff in the college education that you found was particularly valuable for like your current role? And also, is there anything that you wish you had focused on and given more time to when you were a student?
When you say, items that were particularly valuable, are you referring to certain classes or just anything?
I think anything, right? So again, if people listening are current college students, they've got like a bunch of things that are potentially on their plate. So there's their classes, and there's certain classes versus other classes. And then there's like the advice that says, oh, you should be networking all the time, or there's professional development seminars. There's all kinds of things that are out there. And you've got to make choices of like what you're going to focus on. And there's like, having fun and having good social relationships and all that stuff, right? There's all kinds of things. You got to make choices about what to focus on. And I'm just kind of curious, like, from that period of time when you were a college student, like, which of those did you think were more valuable? Which ones might have been less valuable? And are there things that you didn't do that you wish you had done?
Yeah, for sure. Just in general, all of my accounting courses were valuable. If you think you're not going to be in audit, knowing your audit stuff is still valuable.
Okay.
If you're not going to be in tax, pay attention in tax because you're going to need that for the rest of your life. I felt like all of my accounting courses, I still take it to where I am today. Things that I wish I had focused on more that I didn't focus on so much when I was in college was socializing and networking.
Right.
Long Beach State is very much well known for being a commuter school,
yeah.
right? And yep. I didn't really value networking, even though I was active in the accounting society. I wish I was more active in Beta Alpha Psi. They had, classes or events after school or like later at night of, they'd go over different topics every week. What's the best way to review your resume? Or we're going to have a visitor from this firm today. Yeah. Different things. And I wish I had went to all of those events, even if I wasn't interested in them, because showing face goes a long way.
Right.
And what you do and the work that you do, it really does go a long way because you never, ever know when you're going to run into certain individuals again. You never know. And I feel like people have probably heard this before, but this goes even for people who are not in your major. Yeah. They could be in a completely different campus.
Right.
But you never know when you're going to run into someone again. And you want to think about how people are going to remember you. Yeah. Or, what did they do with you? What kind of activities took place together? And I feel like I didn't do so much of that, because after class, I'd be like, okay, I got to go. I'm going to go to work, or, I'm going to go home, or I'm going to go study, which I don't regret going to go study, right?
right.
But it's just, I feel like, networking, I didn't realize it at the time, goes such a long way.
Yeah. So, and do you think of networking in terms of the got to go to a networking event and I got to shake a lot of hands and collect a lot of business cards? You just think of it more in terms of just being involved in things where you're interacting with people and getting to connect with people?
Yes, exactly. Okay. And I did go to some of those networking events. And I guess my social skills were not fully developed. I didn't know how to go up to a certain individual and spark a conversation.
Right.
If I see, a managing partner from Deloitte at a certain event, I would really like to go work there, but how do I start talking to that person? Right. So, even if you're scared or you don't know how, just do it anyway.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people understand. And I think what they appreciate more is you trying.
Right.
And I didn't see that at the time. So most of the time I was just intimidated to initiate some conversations or shake people's hands or reach out to them and keep in touch after these events. I didn't know how to do that. Okay. I feel like if I had, thrown myself in more and it was a little bit more courageous with that, it would have, went a long way.
Right. And then you would have developed that sort of, that skill set and that lack of fear socially earlier, right?
Right. Yeah. And I would say also, if you're doing these things, if you're socializing, going to these networking events, if you want to stand out more, don't do the same cookie cutter email templates, cookie cutter conversations.
Right.
I would say just be more yourself, be more authentic, and that's how people will remember you more.
Yeah, the authenticity thing is really interesting. I'm working on a research project right now, and I have an assistant who's been helping me, and he's reaching out to people on various sites, Reddit and stuff, right? And he gave me a draft of what he wrote, and it was very, like, he was trying to be very professional and trying to be very complimentary and stuff. And I was like, tone it down. Just like, and he didn't listen to me, so he sent the thing out. And he was telling me just the last time we talked, he's like, yeah, so I was talking to this guy, and he was just like, the guy said, dude, I thought you were a robot with all this stuff that you were telling me. You know? And so really, why don't you just talk like a normal human being? And so after that, he started being himself, and then they've connected, right? Because it's like this, my assistant, he's a really nice, charming guy, but it's just like when he's not being himself, you can't see that.
Got it,
So I think it's really interesting that people will put up this front like you think you have to be a certain way.
Yeah, and I understand. You still want to be professional, but be yourself. Yeah. And all of these people, they're just like you, or they've been in your shoes before, and really what they care about is you even trying and you showing your interest.
Or the other thing is, they're different from you. They don't actually like who you are, but eventually they'd find that out anyway, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the people who are going to click with you are going to click with the authentic you, and the people who aren't going to like you aren't going to like you no matter what you do.
Exactly.
So just be yourself. I think that really is the best way to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
So another question I wanted to ask you, but maybe we've already answered it, is like, if you could go back in time, right, and talk to 2015, 2016 Allison while you were still in school, right, is there anything that you would tell yourself back then that Allison now knows that you didn't know back then?
Gosh, I tell myself to pay attention more. I feel like I had only paid attention in the classes that I thought were important.
Okay.
So like upper level courses, right? I felt like after my general education classes were over, I thought, okay, here are my serious classes. I have to pay more attention. Let me be more serious. But realistically, like, pay attention in every class.
Right.
Even in general ed, those type of classes, pay attention and socialize with those kids too.
Right.
Because you're not going to see those people anymore because they're going to go to their own majors, right? That's where everyone starts branching out.
Right.
But socializing and keeping in touch with those people, I would say, is also important. And when I say pay attention, by the way, I feel like when you're in college and you're, in our business management class, for example, we're going through all of these scenarios, and I think what's important when I say pay attention is learn how to apply those to real life scenarios. We can go through the textbook scenarios or make up certain ones in our head, but hold on to these theories and these items that you're learning in class because they are definitely applicable as soon as you enter the industry. And you're going to go back, maybe like 5 years later, you're going to find yourself trying to relearn these things because you didn't pay attention and you didn't retain that knowledge. Yeah. So, I would say that to myself. And another thing that I would say to myself is, don't be so hard on yourself. I feel like when I was graduating, I was really hard on myself, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to get things done as fast as I could. Right. Realistically, there's no rush. You don't want to wait forever, but I felt like I was definitely in a rush to like go to grad school and get things done. And because of that, I ended up making the wrong decisions. Right. So like, for example, shortly after I had graduated, I decided to go to grad school because I thought, I'm like, if I need to go get my credits done as soon as possible so I can go take my CPA exam because I want to do this and this and this so I can start working by next year. Right. Or like, as fast as I can, but really for what? Right. And because of that thought process, I ended up choosing the wrong major in grad school. I thought I had wanted to do tax because I had enjoyed it so much at the time. But realistically, I didn't want to do it. I didn't enjoy it. And I ended up doing the wrong major. I ended up dropping out of grad school. Interesting. Okay. And thinking, okay, I'll just go back later when I find something I'm truly passionate about. Right. It ended up being like this weird waste of energy and time. Not that I wouldn't go back. It's just like I made the wrong decision because I really was so hard on myself and was pressuring myself to get everything done so quickly. Yeah. And now even in my late 20s, I'm about to be 30, and I would still go back to grad school right now. I'm like, okay, maybe I should just go finish that now. Right. Now that I feel like I have a better idea of what I would do. Right. I don't feel like I need it now just because my head is in a different place and I know what I want. But it was definitely a learning experience just because I just had this weird mentality that everything needed to be done ASAP. Yeah, interesting. And now, I think now you have enough experience to sort of
to give a realistic assessment of what you actually need.
Yeah.
Right. And back then you didn't.
No.
It was just like, I want to get it done as fast as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, it really, that impatience thing is a really interesting one, because it's like, I mean, partly it just has to do with being young, right? And because it's just like, when I think about how much time I wasted doing all kinds of stuff, right? And yet here I am doing something that I really love, and I'm successful in what I do, and I enjoy it. It's like, you've got a lot of time, right?
You really
actually have
do.
a lot of time. And it's worth knowing. I think one of the things I think is really worth taking time is like giving yourself space to figure out who you are and what you actually like before you commit to things that are that might be not what you want to do.
Yeah. And some people don't realize what that is until much later. You're not,
Right.
you know, some people may seem like they got it all together right after college, but don't let that, you know, make you feel lost. Some people are like, oh, you know, I feel lost. I'm so distraught because everyone seems to have like they got it together and I don't. It's like, well, some people are just faking it. Some people don't know what they want or what they want to do. And people's goals change as well.
Right.
You know, your goals may change, and that's okay. If you're not sure what you want or what you're good at, it just comes later for some people, which is totally okay. Don't beat yourself up about that. Don't stress yourself out.
So I would give the one caveat that you probably won't figure it out if you're just sitting around.
True.
Right. So you got to do stuff.
Yeah.
And then in doing stuff, you'll start being like, I don't like this. Oh, I really like this. I don't like this. Then you can figure it out. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely don't just sit there and wait for it to come to you. Do as much as you can. Do everything until you figure it out. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. It's interesting that the pay attention thing, I find that really interesting. And partly because, I mean, as a professor, obviously, it's great to have a former student say, yeah, pay attention in class, right? But I also think it's kind of like, look, you're there anyway. So if you're in that classroom in that moment of time, then probably doing what you're doing is the best thing to do. You know what I mean? If you're there, what's the point of zoning out, right?
Right.
Then your time is just disappearing. You're not getting any value out of it. So I think that's the case. I do think, though, sometimes it's hard because if the class is only completely oriented around the abstract theories and stuff, it could be really hard when you're, 21, 22, to sort of think, I don't understand why I might need to use this. Mm-hmm. And then it's harder to believe that I need to pay attention.
Yeah.
Right? To believe that, at some point in time, I might actually need to understand this. So, it's one of the reasons, the way I structure the classes, I try to bring in as much, this is the kind of stuff that you might run into stuff, or here's the theory, but this is what it looks like in a real situation. It doesn't exactly match, but here's how you can use it in that situation. Because maybe that's helpful for people to get, okay, now I can see how it might count. But I don't know if enough teachers are doing that.
I don't think enough teachers are doing that. I remember you did that a lot in your class, which went a long way, but not everyone's doing that. Yeah. And, students become uninterested because they assume they're not going to need it.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. And people just end up cheating. Right. They get a hold of test banks and they don't pay attention in class. They'll just study a test bank later. And that's not going to serve you anything in the future.
Right.
It's not going to do you any service. When you go to class, you're paying for it anyway. Right. What's an hour or 2 hours of your day?
Yeah.
Going to cost you? You'd rather be on TikTok or scroll through social media?
Right.
That's not going to do you anything.
Right.
I just pay attention. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so let me ask. Let's shift a little bit away from the professional thing. I'm curious about how you balance professional stuff with personal life, right? I mean, there's an infinite amount of work you could always do, right? Your company is always willing to take more of your work time. Mm-hmm. But we also have other needs aside from money and work satisfaction. So what do you do to sort of manage the demands on your time from work and also your own personal sort of needs to have time for yourself?
Yeah, I think, first of all, setting boundaries at work is important. If you're lucky, your employer you won't even need to do that.
Right.
But there's sometimes there are times where you do need to do that. So oftentimes what I do right now is I don't work after 5 preferably, unless I start work late. I won't work after a certain time. If I get an email or a Slack message, I won't even look at it unless I'm really bored and I have nothing to do.
Right.
But I do that because before I was literally working like 10 hours a day. I wasn't taking care of myself and the things that were important to me. So what's really important to me is fitness. Like I go to the gym very much so, like every day, and spiritual wellness. And, these are practices that you need, if it's important to you, you practice it every day.
Right.
And if work is consuming you most of your day, then what are you doing? Just eating and working and sleeping?
Right.
And so I've really just learned how to set boundaries and make time for myself and what's important to me, and having your life a little bit more structured, if possible. Know what's important to you and structure your life accordingly. Okay. And for me, structure is everything. I like to have everything planned out.
You're an accounting major.
Yes, I'm an accounting major. I will plan my entire month in advance. Okay. But not everyone needs to do that, right? But as long as you figure out and you know what's important to you, you make time for that. So does that answer your question kind of?
And a couple of things come up actually as I heard you talking about it. I was just thinking about how this links to what we were saying earlier about like when you're in class, like, pay attention, right? It's kind of, because the thing is drawing those boundaries only works if you're getting your work done, right?
Yes.
So that means that you need to have enough of your work done by 5 o'clock that people are okay with you going home, right? So I'm guessing that means that when you're there, you're like on it. You get stuff done that you have to get done.
Be efficient. Get your work done. If anything, get it done early. Have your ducks in a row, and you're good to do whatever you want. I mean, that's how I am with my team. Like, I am not micromanaging anyone. I never liked being micromanaged, right? As long as everyone is getting their work done, do whatever you want. Take as much time off as you'd like, as long as everything's getting done and there's no issues going on, right? It's a win-win for everybody. They come back to work happy the next day, and they're happy to do their work because they're valued.
So it sounds like then it's basically pay attention to the things that you need for yourself, right? Whether it's fitness and, spiritual fulfillment or, socialization or whatever it is, pay attention, like these are the things that I need, right? And arrange your work life around making sure that you have time for those things so that you arrange it meaning make sure that you're able to draw some boundaries at work so that you're able to give yourself time for those things.
Right.
Because if the potential is if you're not feeding those parts of your life and you're only working, you're going to crash and burn eventually.
Exactly.
Right. Or you're going to wake up when you're 50 and be like, I hate my life and I'm miserable and why am I even here? And oh, by the way, now I'm 50.
Yeah.
Right?
But hopefully it doesn't take you that long to realize it. Right. But and that hits you so fast. Yeah. Because, it can hit you in a few years or in a few months. It's really up to the individual. Right. But no one wants to go down that route. Yeah. You just...
But I think a lot of people end up down that route because they haven't thought about it. Like they don't take the time to think about, wait, what do I really need? Right? I think that I've seen that happen with some people, that they don't think about, what do I actually need in my life? I got sucked into this thing. I had a dream about maybe it was a financial number that I wanted to hit, and then everything dedicated around that, and I lost track of all these other things. And now I'm older and my health is terrible and I have a broken family or whatever, and you're just miserable, right? So you have to pay attention to those things as you're going through it.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point because I have seen that with some of my colleagues.
Right.
They work so much. Excellent colleagues. Right. So smart. And they contribute so much to the company. They have grown so much. Right. They've gotten, to leadership levels. Yeah. But their work-life balance is terrible. Yeah. And even when they're at home, their spouses will be like, I feel like you're not even here. Right. Because mentally they're checked out. They're thinking about work. Right. And to what benefit, right? Yeah, sure, maybe you have some extra money, but is that extra $20,000 worth, the relationships you have at home? Right. This balance now that you're dealing with. Yeah. So I think about what's important to you. A lot of probably men will say the money's more important. I need to be the best provider, which I've seen. But I understand that. But is that more important to you than being at home with your family? Like, building those healthy relationships, being there for your children. that's a completely different conversation, right? We can go there all day, but the important question is, what's important to you and how do you make that happen? How do you make that balance happen?
And I think you can only figure it out by actually paying attention.
Yeah.
Right? You actually have to pay attention to yourself and be like, what do I really need? And spend some time on it.
Yeah.
So, and this is kind of related, but I'm curious then, overall, like what does success look like to you? What does it mean to you?
Honestly, success to me just means being happy.
Okay.
It seems like such a simple answer, but I feel like it's so much deeper than that because it's about what makes you happy and how fulfilled you really are. I feel like fulfillment makes you happy.
Right.
So, personally, what makes me happy is, I like to be stable and, not being so necessarily content, but having more than being content. So for me, being happy, it means I'm happy with my relationships with my family. Right. I'm close to my loved ones. I have enough time to spend with them, to have beautiful memories and experiences with them. Right. And while also, away from that, I have a secure job. Yep. I'm not sick. Yeah. No one around me is sick. And there's just so much to be grateful for in life. Don't just think about work and things that you don't have. Think about what you do have and be grateful for that. There's so much to be happy about in this world. Yeah. And we are all just so much more successful than we think, even without the fancy job and the fancy cars and all the money. I feel like there's so much to be grateful for in this world. And reminding yourself of that, it goes a long way. Yeah. And to me, that's what success is. It's just being happy, a happy person, because people feed off of that. And like sharing that with other people, it's a beautiful thing and it goes a long way. And you may not realize it, but it can take you a long way in your professional career as well. Right. Because you build these relationships, you learn people like your energy, they like you for who you are and they want to work with you. Right. And you don't realize it at the time, but it ends up opening opportunities for you, and it's all just because you're a happy person.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, right? How that affects the workplace, because when we were talking earlier, or I was talking about how I really love the department that I work in, right? The people that I work with, they're just really great, and it's an interesting thing, like how much of a difference it makes that the people that I work with are, generally speaking, they have gratitude, they are optimistic, they're nice people to be around, they laugh a lot, right? And so it's just like when I come into work and I'm dealing with colleagues, right, I'm in an environment where people are just in a good mood, and it's just a really nice environment to be in. And I think all of us in the department are we feel like we're really lucky to be working here.
Amazing.
Right? And we're lucky to be working here because of each other, right? It's not, Cal State is so great or Long Beach is great or the College of Business is so great. I'm not saying that they're not, but it's not that. It's that the people that we're working with, we're just really we like each other and we're fun to hang out together, and that just makes the workplace so much better, right? And that really contributes to happiness. Like being surrounded by this is kind of dumb. Being surrounded by happy people makes you happier. I think that's an obvious thing, but it's true, right?
You're right. It's so cheesy, and I hate to say it kind of, but it's honestly so true. It goes a long way. Yeah. I've seen so many people that are upset about things that don't even matter. Yeah. And they won't. You have a choice. Right. At the end of the day. Right. And and
that's not to say that, people don't face challenges and people don't face difficulties, and that's totally there, and so many people that I've worked with have had difficulties, have had challenges. But it's a response that you have.
Exactly. You choose your response. Yeah. And exactly like you said, we all go through challenges, but how we respond to that is what matters at the end of the day. But that's what success means to me. Of course, money's great. Yeah, makes life easier. Sure. But
being poor is hard. Like we grew up without very much, and I was on food stamps and all that stuff. And it's like I know what it's like to not have, and so it's nice to have enough. Yeah. But I think it's useful to think about enough instead of I want everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great. So what's next? What's next for you? What do you got in mind? What do you think the next 5 to 10 years might look like for you?
Yeah. It's funny you bring this up just because I've been asking myself the same question for at least the past 2 years.
Okay.
Because, you know, quickly after college, when you find a company that you like, that you're working for, after so many years, after so many promotions, there comes like a pivotal moment where you ask yourself, what kind of role do you see yourself in?
Right.
Do I see myself as an individual contributor
Right.
type of role, or more of a managerial director type of role?
Right.
Because they're both completely different, right? You can be a specialist in something, and that's completely different rather than directing certain teams. So honestly, for the longest time, I couldn't decide what kind of role I wanted to be in because I felt like I could do both, but which one would I enjoy more? Right. If I'm a director at X, Y, and Z, yeah, I'll be making more money, but am I going to enjoy it?
Right.
Just because I can do it doesn't mean I should.
Right.
So in the next 5-10 years, I was actually talking to an old colleague about this, and I was complaining about certain things, and I eventually concluded that, hey, I think I want to start my own practice, my own consulting practice, because I've worked with so many clients over the years. I've seen so many different types of businesses struggle with all kinds of different accounting issues. And initially, I had this, assumption that you can't have your own firm or your own practice unless you're a CPA.
Right.
And I don't know why I thought that. Because really, that's only the case if you're doing their taxes.
Right.
Or if you're doing their audits.
But that's how it's mostly done, right?
Yes, that's how it's mostly done. But what I would be doing is kind of similar to what I'm doing right now. It would be focused on financial technology. Yeah. So helping clients with, financial software, financial systems, and consulting them on accounting workflows and, how you should be using your financial systems today.
Right.
And if you want to use a new one, consult with us and we'll help migrate you over.
Interesting.
And there's so many different platforms that I can offer, because I'm already so familiar with so many.
Right.
And that's where I would want to start. And I've already actually started drafting up, certain things for this business practice. Okay. And I've had old colleagues that I've worked with in the past interested in working with me if I went down that route. Cool. So I thought that was really cool. And if anything, it kind of inspired me to move forward because, we don't give ourselves enough credit. We do all this work and we forget about everything that we do. Right. Right. It shouldn't have taken that, but I didn't realize it until people came to me like, Allison, you're so smart. Why don't you just do this? Or why don't you try doing this? Right. And then it clicked for me. I'm like, you know what? You're right. Why don't I just do this? But you shouldn't have had to come to that. We should give ourselves a little bit more credit. And it took me a while to realize what I was truly good at and what I could do on my own. Right. Because it's one thing to say you're good at math, and it's a different thing to learn how to apply that for what you want to do for yourself in the future. Yeah. I realized over the years that I ended up being, I'm really good at working with people. Yep. I'm what they call an extroverted introvert, right? Right. Yep. So, and I would have never believed that if someone told me that, 6 years ago, I would have said, no, I don't want to talk to clients. I don't want to do that. Right. But it's actually something I'm very good at. And I've built a lot of relationships with my clients. Right. And I've had people coming back looking for me and asking for me. And I like it so much. Mm-hmm. And so I do see myself continuing to do that. And it makes me feel better that I'm helping people. Right. It's like, yeah, sure, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I can't help people medically per se, but I can still help people. I can help their business. And that makes me feel better at the end of the day. It makes me feel happy that I'm helping. And
the thing is, if you're like a business owner and you have a business, right, your well-being, like all around well-being, sure, physical health, important. Medical doctor is absolutely essential, right? But it's like the financial health of your business is a huge thing, right? It's just like if it's not doing well, your entire world can be a wreck.
Yeah, you can't sleep.
Right, you can't sleep at night, which is going to kill your physical health, by the way, also, right? If you're not sleeping and you're stressed out and stuff. So yeah, it's super, super valuable.
Yeah, totally. I've seen it firsthand, with either like my fiance, my brother, close friends and family. They come to me for help because they don't know how to do certain types of reporting, or something's completely off. They don't know where they went wrong. They need help, regardless of what it was. But at the end of the day, being able to help people outside of work and seeing myself apply those skills where it wasn't necessarily something that was at work. It was nice to see that and see how I can easily help people without even thinking about it. I'm like, just do X, Y, and Z this year, do this. And it blows people's minds. Yeah. And for me, it was like so simple. Right. And I would have never thought that someone would be so impressed or someone wouldn't know how to do this. Right. And I lost scope of my skills somewhat.
Right. So you're in a job where you're doing it at work and it's expected of you. And so I guess you just think, this is just a thing. This is a thing I do because this is what my job is. And you don't recognize that, wait a minute, there's a reason why I'm being hired to do this. This is knowledge that's valuable.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess you just like to realize that, that's not the company that does it. That's me that has that knowledge. Probably takes a while, right?
Yeah. And I've been doing it for a certain industry, but I can expand that. Yeah. It doesn't only have to apply to these industries that I'm working with. Right. So it's nice to see myself apply that, to different businesses and see the impact of that. That's because usually clients, they come, they know what they're signing up for. I do my job, and we say goodbye. Right. If it's a simple project. Yep. And I don't really get to see the impact of it all sometimes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Unless someone comes back and tells me, which they don't always do. Yeah. But, it's really nice to see the project from start to finish and how that impacts a business owner. Right. For sure. Mm-hmm. That's cool. Yep. I totally get it. I think that is all I have for you. Questions, but I really want to thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks so much. And being on the show and sharing your insights. And it's just really great to talk to you again after 8 years, I think, 7 or 8 years, and hear what's going on with you. Honestly, thank you so much for having me. I hope this was insightful for future students and people entering the work industry. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you all also, listeners, for joining me today with my discussion with Allison. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you like what you hear and you think it's useful and interesting, thumbs up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or subscribe, and see you again.